A couple of days ago, I received in the mail the new issue of the C3I magazine, published by Roger McGowan and dedicated to all things GMT. There are articles and essays about GMT games, about notable designers, and also there is quite a wealth of add-ons, player rates, scenarios, things like that. For example, here we have a player rate for Iron and Oak. And terrain tiles to add to the board of Iron and Oak to play special scenarios that are included here, so that's good. You just cut these and place them on the map. Then we have scenarios for Panzer, a game that I like very much, by GMT. I also like Iron and Oak. Next War Korea, advanced game tables. Next War Korea collapse sequence of play. I really have no idea what that is, by the way. Advanced sequence of play, so play rates for Next War Korea. Scenarios for SPQR Deluxe. Two scenarios for Combat Commander. Lots of stuff, as you can see. Player aid for Rebel Raiders on the High Seas, one of my favorite games of 2013, and errata and fixes for Rebel Raiders on the High Seas. Counters to be used with the expansions, errata to be used with the scenarios, things that you will need. As you can see, some counters are missing here because I've used them. And I've used them because the magazine also comes with a complete game. Soviet Dawn, the Russian Civil War 1918-1921. This is a reprint of a game that was originally published by Victory Point Games. It is a game in the States of Siege system, and it's one of the earliest implementations of the system. The topic is, well, the Russian Civil War, starting from 1918 and going on until you survive. The idea, like in other States of Siege games, is that you need to defend a central position. In this case, it is Moscow. There are fronts that have boxes, and there are enemy fronts, enemy armies that advance on those fronts, and you lose the game if one of them ever occupies your key position, in this case Moscow. Also, like in other games in the system, there is much more than that. One of the things that you have here, for example, is a political level track. You need to get your political level marker as high as possible. This represents your government. You are playing the newborn Soviet government trying to take control of the entire country. And since you are new to the task, you need to earn the trust of your people and also the international community. So as you gain political power, the marker on the political level track goes up, and that means that you have consolidated your power. You avoid collapse. If the marker ever goes in the 0 box, you lose the game. Those are the two ways to lose the game. That marker is there, or any enemy marker is in there. Decks of cards. There are 3 decks of event cards. Gray for the Twilight of the Old Empire, black for the Night, and yellow-orangish for the Soviet Dawn. So this is the first era, second era, third era. You shuffle this deck of event cards, which you use at the beginning of the game. There will be a card that will instruct at some point to move to the second era. At that point, you shuffle the remaining cards from this deck together with the second deck. In there is a card that will propel you towards the third era, and at that point, you shuffle that deck of cards with the cards that you have here. There are 2 ways of winning the game. One is you survive until the end. You go through all 3 decks. of events. You're still standing, then good for you, you win the game. Another way is to get your political level marker to box number 9. It seems that some players have found that a little too easy, and so there's an extra box, box number 10. If you want a tougher challenge, then you can use that one. You can establish that you win a political victory if you reach box number 10. If you survive until the end of the game, if you go through all the events, you win a military victory. Okay, how does the game work? I explained the States of Siege system in other reviews, but I haven't done that in a while, and this one is so linear. This definitely is the most linear game in the system that I've ever played. I think I can just give you a recap of the system. I can tell you a little bit about it. Each turn, you start by simply drawing a card, and you start implementing the things that you find in there. You can also read the headlines that tells about the events that are happening. You have flavor text, historical text, and then you have an explanation of the enemy fronts that will advance. In this case, you have Allies, Finland, and Eastern. Now, there's something interesting here that not all fronts start as active at the beginning of the game. At the beginning of the game, only the Southern, the Eastern, and the Baltic front are active. As you can see, for example, the Allies are inactive and Finland is inactive too. So actually you simply ignore the inactive fronts. In this case, 3 fronts may potentially advance, but 2 actually don't, and the Eastern Front does advance. So you advance the fronts that apply to your situation, and those only. In this case, we have the Eastern Front, and when a front that is active advances, you simply move it by 1 box on its track towards London. London? Nah, Moscow. Then the card gives you a number of actions that you can use in several ways. There may also be other special events that happen. In that case, those are simply self-explanatory. There are good explanations about those in the rulebook. You simply follow whatever it is that happens. As for your actions, you have 3 actions that you can choose, pretty much. You can choose to attack one of the fronts. Now, as you can see, the enemy fronts have a number printed on them. This is 3. The Baltic front is 4. It's very simple. You roll a d6 and you may have modifiers that you apply. For example, the card may give you modifiers, not in this case, but other cards may do that, and that will make it easier or harder to attack certain enemy armies in certain moments. You apply the modifiers, roll a d6. If you roll higher than the strength of the army that you're attacking, you manage to push the opponent back by 1 box. Otherwise, nothing happens. And you can perform the same action as many times as you want, as long as you have actions. So that's one of the things that you can do. You simply attack the opponent. So another thing is you can try to consolidate your political level. It works in a very similar way. You roll a d6, you apply modifiers that you may or may not have, and if you beat the number in the area that your political marker is in, so 3 at the beginning, 4 later, then you advance by 1 box, otherwise nothing happens. Another action is to try to reorganize the red army. That is, you roll a d6 and you need to roll a 6. So not very easy. You will need pretty much to wait until there are cards that give you modifiers or situations that give you modifiers. Otherwise, it's a pretty desperate attempt to roll a d6 and to hope to get a 6. But if you do get a 6, then you roll a die again to determine the advantage that you receive. And the advantage is represented by one of those markers. Suppose that I roll a 3, then I get that marker there, armor trains, with a 4, I would get applied experience. You simply take that marker as a reminder of the benefit that you have gained. The rulebook tells you what those benefits are, but trust me, those are really, really, really good. If there's a turn where you have a modifier that will make it more likely to get that marker, and your situation is not desperate, go for it, because they are really phenomenal long-term advantages. Also, to give a little bit of room to wiggle in case things are getting bad, you have those markers that you can spend. A political decree you simply spend to get an extra free attempt to improve your political level on the political track. The the reserve offensives markers, each you spend for a one-time benefit, which is an extra attack against one of the enemy armies. And that is really the main idea. These are the main rules. On the other hand, there are a lot of smaller things that really make the game interesting. But those depend on the cards that you get, on specific circumstances that may or may not happen in different games. And that you can react to in different ways. For example, when the card is drawn, that will indicate the passage from the first deck to the second deck, then there is a decision that you need to make, and that will influence things in the future. There are roles on the political dissent table. Certain cards will instruct you to roll on that table, and your political level may fluctuate, may get worse, may get much better. Of course, getting at least a decent level of political stability early on in the game is important, because if you lose political stability because of whatever, any situation that you don't expect, then that's particularly bad. And then as you get to know the cards, you get to know overall the flow of things that may happen. For example, there is a card that will instruct you to check the destiny of the Tsar. And you are the revolutionaries, you really want that Tsar to be shot as soon as possible. Sorry if this sounds cynical, but that's what it is. When the card that instructs you to check the fate of the Tsar is drawn, if the Eastern Army is in the 4 or 5 box of its track, then the Tsar is shot and you get a benefit for that turn. But if by any chance that marker is there, then that means that the whites that are coming from the east have managed to liberate the Tsar. Then you take this marker, you place it on a box as a reminder of how shameful it is for you as a young commie to have the Tsar around, and you will get a penalty that will apply for the rest of the game. You really do not want that to happen. That means that for as long as the Tsar is around and you haven't figured out how to execute him, which is pretty much what not having drawn that card means, you need to be careful, you need to keep the whites at bay. After the Tsar is gone, then you have a little more room to maneuver things, and if you have an emergency in one area, then you can allow the Eastern Army to move a little closer to Moscow as you deal with other trouble. Petrograd and Kiev, important political objectives. If an opponent gets into that box, you lose a point of political stability. You see how bad it would be in that situation. And that may happen several times. You kick them out and then they come back. Your political level goes down again. But there's a card that allows you to spend actions, for example, to fortify Petrograd. In that case, you place that marker there, which makes it harder for the enemies to enter Petrograd. But again, those are things that you need to take into account. If you're kicking your enemies out of one of the political objectives, it is a good idea to kick them out for a little bit, not just to push them out of the town, but to push them farther. Otherwise, next time that they come back, boom, you lose political support. There is a card that will make the Southern Front start moving real fast. The front may move multiple times in a turn until you stop it. That means that if the card hasn't come out, it would be good if the Southern Front is not just sitting there. In a regular situation, the Southern Front may advance, and then you at least have a turn to react to that. But if that card hasn't come out and the Southern Front may start running towards Moscow, you may lose the game suddenly. All of these subtleties, I'm not listing nearly all of them. These are just things that you will discover as you play the game, and that will make the narrative quite interesting. Speaking about the narrative, that to me really is what makes this game shine. Mechanically, some people may not like it very much because it is very linear. There are other games in the system that seem to have more choices for the players, that seem to have more levels and layers of complexity. I remember Ottoman Empire has real mini games that happen in certain areas of the board. This one is much more straightforward. I would say that mechanically this could be a very good introduction to the system for somebody who has never played it, but the system is so easy that I don't think you necessarily need to start from the easy one. But the narrative, again, because of all these elements and because of other things that I haven't mentioned, and it would take me too long to mention, the game really has a strong story, a strong historical flavor, and it has a huge replay value. I would say that in terms of replay value, this game has one of the highest that I've seen in the States of Siege system. And a great thing that really changes the overall flow of the game, the narrative of the game, is the fact that these fronts, the enemy fronts, may become active or inactive. There are events that will turn active fronts into inactive, then you do not have to worry about those. Other fronts that may turn inactive into active. You can, if you reach enough political stability to get into this area, then the allies become indecisive. That means that they cannot advance for as long as the political marker is in there. But then, of course, the political level may go down and the allies start advancing again. The fact that you do not have to fight against all fronts every time for the entire game, and the activation and inactivation of the fronts changes from game to game gives this game a huge replay value. I really had a great time playing this game. It's pretty tough. I think I played it at least 7-8 times before I won. And the time that I won, I must say that I really, I acknowledge I had a couple of very lucky moments. For example, I got 2 reorganization markers, and they were very good ones. That was key to victory. Overall, mechanically, the game is simple. If you're just looking for a million decisions, for a game that is fiddly and a brain burner, this game is not going to be for you. Many decisions are obvious, and there are many decisions that you can choose from, but those decisions are relevant. Budgeting your actions is relevant. Even if you don't have a long list of actions to choose from, there's still a lot of effects, a lot of things that will happen because of the decisions that you make. A little bit of a dice fest, a little bit of a card fest. There are times in which the cards will just come out of the deck in such a way that, boom, there's nothing that you can do. But that will not happen every time, will not happen often. I really got the sense that even though the luck factor is considerable, I was still the one playing, I was still in control of the fate of the young Soviet Union, and that was a good challenge. Bottom line, a fun game, very strong historical flavor, not very complicated. For somebody, this will be a plus. For somebody, it will be a huge minus. But I personally enjoyed Soviet Dawn very, very much. It comes with a great magazine, a lot of other stuff. Overall, definitely a good package. Better than that, a really, really good package.